purpose and remit. Oh, sorry about that. Actually, can I just check, is everybody okay with the recording of this? It's a useful resource to share moving forward. So for those of you that have just joined the recording, actually, we're just looking briefly at the appropriate body responsibilities, which the main one is to quality assure the ECT induction process that now takes place over 2 years. And in doing so, through that quality assurance, we are basically checking that early career teachers are receiving their statutory entitlement, and that's with regard to the statutory guidance, which you should and will be all familiar with. Within that, we will provide ECF fidelity checks. Fidelity checks really only take place if you are not engaging with a DFE funded early career teacher-based training program, and everybody that's signed up to our appropriate body are either accessing the early career teacher program through Ambition or Capita or one of the DFE training providers that are fully funded. We also provide induction checks, so just to make sure that things are going as they should be at school. If you've got any concerns about your ECT, that we may come in to help and support you in putting in place a support plan or an informal support plan. Our main responsibility is to review in detail progress reviews and assessments that are submitted by yourself, which gives evidence to suggest whether an ECT is or is not on track. And the appropriate body is that sort of main entity that makes the final decision after 2 years as to whether ECTs have satisfactorily met the teacher standards, which are based on your recommendations and head teachers. So that's just a broad overview of what we are and what our core function is. Just moving to next slide. So this afternoon, within the hour, we are going to hopefully talk through and really unpick with you so you're very clear on what your role is as a school induction tutor stroke lead. We do get some real confusion because the DFE, Ambition and various other documents do refer to you as an induction coordinator, an induction lead, an induction tutor. And I think just to clarify here, they are one and the same, although they have 3 different titles. We're going to look at the expectations and timelines for completing progress reviews. For those of you that have had ECTs that have started in September, they will be due very shortly. But also expectations and timelines for completing assessments. And the reason that we are looking at that is because we will have some colleagues on the call whose ECTs started in January. And if your ECT started in January, they will have completed coming up to completing 3 terms, and therefore an assessment, a standard formal assessment, will be due. We will also look at how to navigate ECT Manager and how you can access support materials and resources. We have updated on there a number of exemplars for you regarding progress reviews and also assessments. And then we're going to look finally at what to do if you have any concerns about your ECT during the 2-year induction period. Okay, so first of all, I want to bring your attention to the statutory guidance, which is an absolute must read because it does set out roles and responsibilities in terms of courses of action that you need to take as induction tutors, as well as sort of if you have any concerns about how to tackle situations such as your ECT's performance, or in some cases we have schools that request for induction to be extended, and we can refer to statutory guidance there. Really, that can only happen in sort of real, I don't know, cases that are that have been sort of brought to our attention in good time, but also if absences have taken place. If your ECT has had more than 30 days absence, 30 days or more over the 2-year period, that again is a reason for the induction to be extended. So just to bring your attention to, we've summated here what the statutory entitlement does lay out in terms of your roles and responsibilities in implementing induction for your early career teachers. So they, regardless of what training program, early career teacher program you are engaging with, this is what must be happening. So a reduced timetable of 10% in year 1, 5% in year 2. They your ECTs have access to a programme that is in line and relates to the early career framework. Many of you on the call here are accessing that through Ambition, which is delivered by Exceed Teaching School Hub. But I'll just give you a couple of minutes to read those bullet points in front of you, so that just we're all very clear on what that statutory guidance suggests we should, well, it stipulates what we should be doing as part of the induction process.
Emma, somebody's asking in the chat, will this PowerPoint be shared?
Yes, and the recording will be shared, so no problem. And equally, if you do have questions, please do pop them in the chat, and between myself and colleagues throughout this session, we will most definitely be able to answer them. I'm just going to pop onto the next slide now. Again, I think it's really important to clarify, because some of you may be new to the Early Career Teacher Programme and new to the 2-year induction, just to look at the roles and responsibilities of mentor v induction lead. They are very different, and we do know that some of you are one and the same as well. We do have a handful of induction tutors, induction leads that are also mentors. Ideally, that isn't sort of what is recommended, but we do understand in smaller schools and with staffing issues that just has to be the case in certain situations. But ideally, those roles are kept distinctly clear, because the mentor is sort of the expert teacher, an experienced practitioner that is responsible for delivering effective instructional coaching and mentoring and support on a weekly basis, whereas the induction tutor, the main responsibility and remit there is to ensure that the ECF-based training programme is implemented effectively at school, and is responsible for the formal assessment against the teacher standards within the 2-year induction period. So just on this slide here, we've got an overview and an outline of what your responsibilities as an induction tutor stroke lead actually are. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to sort of read through those, and I'll sort of embellish on them where possible here. So in terms of making sure that your early career teacher is accessing a full induction, your role and responsibility is to support the mentor in their role. And as I said before, some of you may also have that dual role, but it's to make sure that your ECTs are getting that weekly support, coaching, etc. And then your responsibility is to carry out the regular progress reviews and the 2 formal assessments, which will take place at the end of each year. So there'll be one in term 3 and one in term 6, but we're going to go into a lot more detail about what progress reviews and what formal assessments look like from colleagues Maureen and Kuljinder as we get more into the session. I guess again, what's really important to draw your attention to, that you with your professional expertise and experience have to be able to really recognise when early action is needed if an ECT is experiencing any difficulties at any point. Coaching on coaching. This is if you are accessing the ECF-based training programme with Exceed Teaching School Hub and with Ambition. What we offer is coaching on coaching for your mentors. So this means that as part of that early career teacher programme, they get support 3 times over the 2 years, where they receive a coaching session with their ECT is observed, so their practice on instructional coaching can be supported and developed and improved. So, and we sort of have an expectation at Exceed Teaching School Hub that induction leads, induction tutors actually fulfill that role. So that would mean that we would there also provide training for you, and this helps you sort of quality ensure. And going back to the statutory guidance, it really does ensure that you are supporting that successful implementation of the early career teacher programme in your school at a local level. So if you are given the opportunity to observe your mentor coach your ECT, and then you are trained to coach them in turn, it really does. There's quite a lot of research that shows that can have a significant impact on the quality of coaching that's taking place. So we will be providing for those induction tutors and leads training via Ambition on the 30th of November and another date to ensure that all our induction tutors and leads are fully upskilled in that sort of capacity to provide coaching on coaching, and that would take place twice, if not 3 times, over the 2-year induction period. But we'll come back to that at a later date, but just something that I wanted to bring your attention to if you are accessing the early career teacher programme with Ambition and ourselves. Okay, progress reviews and assessments. This is just a very light touch that I'm going to give you an overview here. As I said, my colleague called Jinder is going to go in a little bit more detail, but these must happen every term. Even if you have a part-time ECT, they will need to complete a progress review. It doesn't sort of go on if you've got an ECT that is 0.5, 0.6 or 0.8, there has to be some sort of progress review submitted at the end of each term, and their induction period will ultimately obviously be over a longer period of time. If you are 0.5, your induction period is 4 years, etc., and it's calculated for you on ECT Manager pro rata depending on what contract your ECT has. Progress reviews are written by yourselves, ECTs add comments to them, and they are signed and reviewed and endorsed by your head teacher. So that's just a brief overview I wanted to bring your attention to. Also, just to let you know, when you are writing progress reviews or assessments, you do identify whether ECTs are on track or not, but you cannot fail your ECF-based induction until the end of, if that is the case, until the end of 2 years, because you are being assessed fully against the teacher's standards at the end of year 2. So I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds now, because again, we are aware that there are many induction leads and tutors on the call here that are at different starting points, or at different assessment points, rather, not starting points, different assessment points with your ECT. So hopefully this table in front of you will help you out here. So if you've got ECTs that started last September, they've completed already 2 progress reviews and a standard assessment. So now in December, they will be due progress review 3. Those of you that had ECTs that started last January, they are now due their first formal standard assessment. Any that started in April, we're approaching progress review 2. And any that started in this September, our new early career teachers are about to receive their very first progress review, which is progress review 1. And just to be clear, that all of these assessment points or stages are due in December. I think it's December the 9th. The next slide will sort of highlight that. As I said, Jinder and Maureen will go into that a bit more detail, but we just thought this is quite useful for you to see now the multi-layer sort of assessment points that we have now that we have so many ECTs that start at different times in the academic year. Now, we have created this table and updated our resources and handbook for you all, just so that you are very clear now on what the expectations are within a progress review at different stages, or standard assessments, or even final assessments. And those of you that completed these last year, you will see we have made modifications now in line with statutory guidance, but also training that we've received from the National Teachers Association. And the biggest change is going to be that progress review 1 will focus now on 3 particular standards: TS1, TS3, TS7. And this table should really help you in terms of the guidance of the length and what should be included. So we feel this gives a lot more structure to what should be included in your progress reviews and in your standard assessments. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to read over that, but we will be coming back to this when we go into more detail about how to write a progress review and what should be included. These do need to be fairly brief, as you'll see, a paragraph on each teacher standard, the 3 that we've identified there, and no longer than 300 words in total, and that would be the absolute maximum. So you're looking at between 80 to 100 words per teacher standard in terms of your progress review 1. Progress review 2, very similar, but then you'll see that we add in there TS4 at this stage as well. I'm not going to steal Jinder's thunder, because she's going to go into this in a little bit more detail for you. So at that conjecture, I am going to dutifully hand over to my colleague, who is going to talk you through progress reviews and assessment points for the different stages, but initially looking at those early career teachers that have started in September. So Kuljinder, can I hand over to you now?
Hi everyone, I just want to respond to one query in the chat. Dan has asked, will we have examples of progress reviews? And the answer is yes, it will all be in the resources folder on ECT Manager, and Emma will talk you through exactly how to write one. So as Emma's already mentioned, there's progress reviews are paragraphs, and then the formal assessment, Maureen will go into more detail what to do. There's progress reviews 1 and 2, 4 and 5, and then the assessments takes place in terms 3 and term 6. So we look at the ECT over the 2-year program. So at the end of year 1, there'll be one assessment, end of year 2, another assessment. And then if you're looking at this table, if you've just joined us as an ECT in September, this term 1, the form will be released next week on the 25th. And then as an induction tutor, you will be able to submit the form from the 2nd of December. And the deadline is the 9th. So then we have a week to look over them. And the same for Progress Review 2, which is released in March. And again, you can submit it a week later, and the deadline's 24th. So roundabout before the Easter holidays. And then June and July would be the formal assessment.
And just to point out that this is just for these dates for the progress review 1. These dates will be similar if you're doing a progress review 2 at this point, or 3, or an assessment as well. Those dates are very similar, but this table in its entirety is just for those that are new to the early career teacher program.
So when you're completing a progress review, it's not about passing or failing. We just need to know whether the ECT is on track or not on track. And if they're on track, there's a part of you can just write on track in your commentary. If they're not on track, then there's certain steps, which I mentioned in the handbook, that we have to follow. And that includes a support plan, which has to be uploaded onto ECT Manager, and the brief commentary in relation to teacher standards. We don't need to rely on lesson observation records. It's just commentary on those standards that we mentioned: TS1, TS3, and TS7 for the first progress review. And the head teacher will be updated after each progress review. And everyone, when you've joined ECT Manager, on your dashboard, you'll be able to see when deadlines are due and what needs doing.
And as Kuljinder said, we will go through with you on ECT Manager towards the end of the session to show you where exemplars are of progress reviews for an ECT that is on track and an ECT that is not on track, but also how you actually navigate the system on ECT Manager to complete these also.
And then this slide goes into more detail, is what, as an overview for the progress reviews. So the first 2 are very detailed. So we've asked you to focus on TS1, TS3, and TS7 in the first progress review, because as an ECT, these are the standards that you probably want to implement and perfect first. So that's setting high expectations, making sure you got good subject knowledge, or developing your subject knowledge and curriculum, and looking at behavior management. And then progress review 2, we ask you to do those 3 plus TS4, which is looking at planning and delivering lessons. And then progress review 3 and 4 are looking overall at the teacher standards, but really there should be more lighter touch. And all you're focusing on is the strengths of the ECT and any areas that still might need improving.
Is that your you're a bit come to an end now, Kuljinder.
Yeah.
And we're moving on to, so thank you for that, Kuljinder. And as I said, we will go through and give you some exemplars as to what they look like. And the idea again is when you get to progress 3 and 4, which is in the second year of induction, that they are a little bit more lighter touch, and you're just really summating areas of strength and areas of development of your ECT, unless they're on a support plan. Okay, I'm going to hand over now to Marine, who's going to talk you through what the 2 formal assessment points would look like for you, because as we've identified at the beginning of the call, we'll have some colleagues that are entering that if you had an ECT that started in January. So over to you, Marine.
Thank you very much. So in terms of assessment points, we have the final term of year 1, so that's term 3, and then the final term of year 2, which is term 6. So the first assessment should be about the whole of the ECT's first year, so that's important to know. So when you are completing that, just make sure you're not just referring to term 3, it actually would be term 1, 2 and 3 in their first assessment point. The dates of these would be set through ECT Manager, and of course, it all depends on when your ECT started. There would be different ECTs in your school that would be having different assessment points if their start date was different, and these are given through on ECT Manager. So this is a really important point. So the judgments are against the teaching standards and not the early career framework. So your ECTs are accessing induction over 2 years, and that's all to do with the early career framework. They're gaining training, conferences, clinics, but in terms of the appropriate body and their assessments, these are all about the teaching standards. So that is a really, really important thing just to highlight. So something that differs when doing assessments is that we're looking at the strengths and the areas of development for the ECTs, whereas in a progress review, it purely is the strength. So here also you would be looking at manageable targets that the ECT could be working towards, and looking at their priorities of how we can really get them to pass their first 2 years and to make sure they pass all their teaching standards. So if an ECT is not making progress, we would know this by the assessment point. It wouldn't be a big surprise. So that's a message, a really key message that we're trying to bring home, that it should be, you should be aware of any of the challenges or any of the issues that are being faced with the ECT, and it shouldn't come to the first assessment point where alarm bells start ringing. This really does need to be a very supportive process, but if there were issues by assessment point 1, your ECT would have a support plan in place, your appropriate body should be aware, and there should be that real support around the ECT. So there should be no surprises, nothing should be unexpected. There's something I need to mention actually.
Okay, do you want me to go back to the other slide?
Yeah, just a quick one. So have I mentioned about if your ECT, if your ECT has a reduced induction? Did I mention that, Emma?
No.
I just want to point that one out. So if your ECT does have a reduced induction, so that might be due to extensive experience, you might feel that they don't need the entire 2 years of induction, but that would have to be a conversation that you would have to have with Emma, along with some evidence, and then we can work together to see if your ECT doesn't require the full length of induction. But if that is the case and it has been agreed that they have a reduced induction, then you only need to complete a final assessment for that ECT. You don't need to complete a first assessment, but that would have to be something that you would contact Emma about.
I'll just jump in there, Marine. Actually, that happens in sort of really exceptional circumstances, and we've not had that happen as of yet at our appropriate body. It is whereby your ECT may have extensive, and I mean extensive, experience in teaching prior to them gaining their QTS, or they may have had QTS and been working as performing against the standards in their role as a higher level teaching assistant or a teaching assistant within a school previously, but there has to be a lot of evidence that supports that is the case. Also, I think what's good to point out here as well is that when Marine is talking about assessment points, if at any point your ECT leaves after they've completed a term, or unexpectedly leave, or leaves after a year, you would have to complete what is called an interim assessment as well, just for whatever reason, if they were leaving, if it hasn't coincided with a particular assessment point. So, but you would be notified, we would notify you about what that looked like and when, and if you had to do that, and that is if your ECT leaves. And that is only if they've done more than a term of induction with you. Shall I go to the next slide now, Maureen?
Yeah. The assessment form itself, and I'm sure we'll be looking at an example soon, and we do have an example on ECT Manager. So it's completed at term 3 and term 6. And it's different to a progress review form. So there should be a brief paragraph for each teaching standard. And the evidence should be very clear and transparent, and you should be using existing documents as evidence. So for example, lesson feedback, feedback from learning walks, book scrutinies, and it definitely isn't things that you're asking the ECT to write up, or forms that you're making on top of the things that you already have. We're moving away from having a big folder of evidence that we had when we were doing our NQT year. That's absolutely not what we're looking for anymore. It's just a burden on ECTs. It could be a burden on induction leads. So you're just making sure that you're using the evidence that you have, and it's clear evidence and it links. So yeah,
I think I just moved on to that slide because that's what you were basically discussing there, Maureen. So sorry about that.
Is that are we okay to go back to the last one?
Yeah, of course, of course.
So in terms of looking at whether your ECT is meeting, partially meeting or not meeting their standards, it's important to note here, if your ECT is on track to meet their teaching standards in assessment point 1, they might not be meeting every single teaching standard. They might just be partially meeting some, and that could be their areas where they really need to work on. And I think as an induction lead, it's really good for you to have an awareness of looking to the future and thinking about your ECT. Will they pass their induction by the end of their 2 years? And it's always really thinking forward. So if they're not really meeting their standards right now, do we think with the right support in place, do we think that they can meet these standards by the end of year 2? So it really is thinking ahead so there are no surprises. We're moving away from the language of pass and fail. So you'll see on their assessment form, it'll say the teaching standards and met, partially met or not met. And we're really trying to work with the ECTs to support them in meeting their targets. But when you have a look at the form, you'll really see the kind of language that you should be using and the kind of targets that we should be having.
Can I just add in there as well, Maureen, that when you're writing a commentary, which is very brief, as we said, it's like a very short paragraph, 3 or 4 sentences around each teacher standard. It may be that there are, for example, it may be that there are a couple of standards, three perhaps, where your ECT is partially meeting them. That is absolutely fine. That does not mean they are not satisfactorily meeting on track to pass their induction. So it doesn't, when you complete that first assessment, the standard one in term 3, whether that's in January or you did it previously in September, or it may be even in July, the end of this academic year, it is absolutely fine for your ECTs to be partially meeting some of the standards, because it is a 2-year induction programme and we wouldn't expect them to be fully meeting all of them in the end of that first year. They may very well be, and lots of our ECTs are, but I'm getting an echo. But I think it's really important that you are aware of that. Are you getting an echo when I'm speaking?
Yeah, it might have been because my mic was on, but I've muted it.
Sorry. Okay, so sorry about that, just to add that in, but thank you, Maureen.
So yeah, just to reiterate on what I said before, so we are really moving away from big files full of evidence, and it's things that you already have, so existing and working documents, making sure you're observing your ECT at regular intervals. So mentors should be observing ECTs in their first year weekly, and ECTs in their second year fortnightly. And I think, Emma, feel free to jump in on here, but as an induction lead, you do need to have an awareness of how your ECT is doing, and you should be involved in some of these observations. It shouldn't be just the mentors who are observing the teachers all the time. Am I right in saying that, Emma?
It's different form of observation. So your mentors are there as an expert teachers to support, co-teach, collaborate, and deliver that sort of exemplar practice and observe. They're observing an action step from, if you're engaging with the ECF-based program with Ambition, for example, they are observing a specific action step that's put in place that they are receiving instructional coaching on. The observations that you undertake as an induction tutor stroke lead are quite different. But you can be triangulating information here with your mentor, with what you've seen, their engagement with, you know, how are they implementing the learn that to the learn how into the classroom? How's the curriculum translating into the classroom? These can inform your judgment, but as Maureen said earlier, the early career-based training program is not an assessment tool, but it will obviously inform, you know, the engagement of that, will inform the judgments that you make against the teacher's standards.
And the next one, please. Thank you. Would you like me to go through this one?
Yeah, if you go through it, and we can go through it, and then we can go back together. So I think I'll just start a little bit here with, if your ECT is not on track, that is not, you know, that might sound really alarming, but we do have ECTs that are not on track in the first term, but that does not mean to say they're not going to get back on track, because it is a 2-year induction program. So I'll hand over to Maureen now to talk through to you the things that you can do, that we have in place to support you if your ECT is not on track.
Yeah, so and the message we're really trying to have here is it's not like a formal meeting where, you know, we're trying to scare the ECTs into thinking, oh, I'm going to bail my induction. This really needs to be a supportive process. So they would have a support plan, and there's exemplars on ECT Manager. And I think here it's really important to have really clear targets. They need to be linked to the teacher standards, and they need to be really good sources of support. But you really need to work with your ECTs to really talk about what it is that can help them to meet these standards. Could it be something like working with their fellow year group partner? Maybe it's a particular subject area that they need to develop. Is it giving them time to work with a subject lead? So it's really working with the ECT to have them clear targets in place. And it's all about getting the ECT back on track, building their confidence, making sure they can go through these standards, you know, and really start meeting them. Your head teacher should be made aware of any concerns at any point. Again, no surprises. And then, of course, we need to raise concerns with the appropriate body. And Emma, am I right in saying that this can be done on ECT Manager? In the
yeah, just you can either do there's obviously an email address that you have, the AB@Exceed Academies Trust, that you can email us to, but also there is on ECT Manager dashboard where you can, a help desk where you can submit messages, so we would get messages that way. But it's really important that these issues are raised sooner rather than later if they are. But as an appropriate body, we do need to be completely aware if a support plan is put in place, and we do have people sometimes where they put a pre-informal support plan in place, or we might come out and support you in school to assess, does this ECT need to go on a support plan or not? I myself have been into schools to support in capacity as of an induction check, to work with induction leads and mentors to make sure that if that is the case, then that's what, you know, what we are going down the right route. Okay, I've come now to ECT Manager Resources, but I think I'm going to come back to that shortly, because I think we're going to continue with the concerns here. So if a school has concerns about ECT's progress, you just need to make sure the appropriate body is notified immediately, and a copy of the support plan is sent for us to review and attach to their documents. Before it gets to that point, I said we are more than happy, and we do come out and support and have conversations with induction leads as to what that support plan looks like, and indeed if one is actually necessary, and also quality assure that it's fit for purpose. So we're more than happy to do that. You'll see in the resources area on ECT Manager in the handbook, there's real guidance there on what to do if your ECT, you have a concern about them or they are struggling, and we will focus on making sure that they're getting their entitlement, and that support plan is fit for purpose, as I say. And then just continuing with the concerns, if an ECT has concerns about the support that they're receiving from school, again, this is outlined in our handbook in the resources area. We would encourage them to try and resolve it via a school induction tutor. So try and contain that to a school level, they can contact the appropriate body. And if an ECT has a concern and you would like to contact the appropriate body, that is fine as well. But what we do have is an independent named contact, which again, I can signpost you to in the handbook, because we are not a HR service. We're not there to sort of mediate either. We're just there to sort of offer support where best we can. So we have somebody independent, which is Matthew Atkinson, head teacher at another school, that we would signpost our ECTs to, rather than us as an appropriate body getting involved with them. But this is all outlined in the induction handbook for you. And that's just sort of reiterates what I've said there on this screen, but we will be sharing these with you. But we do really encourage ECTs to attempt to resolve any issues themselves initially before it escalates to a named contact. But just so that you know, for quality assurance purposes, we have procedures, we have systems in place if that did ever happen. Okay, so what I'm going to do before we get to questions now is go back to this slide, which is all about ECT Manager resources. So I am now going to stop sharing my screen and pull up ECT Manager and sort of talk you through the dashboard and what you would do, and signpost you to where you can find the updated exemplar assessment resources and induction handbook, which is also updated to support you in completing your progress reviews and assessments. And then I can see the chat function has about 33 questions in it, or if not more. We will go through questions and answers then. But if you do have any questions and I'm not covering them, please do put them in the chat function. Okay, so here we go. Can everybody see now the ECT Manager? Am I sharing that, Marine and Kuljinder?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes. Yeah.
So this is what you will have when you log on. This is the dashboard that you have. So you can see here that you'll have, this is we've created a false Joanna Blogs ECT here that's at our demo school. You will have this in front of you, so you'll be able to see up and coming assessments, up and coming reports, etc. When we said that if you needed to contact us, you can do it through this help desk here. So you can create a ticket, and many of you do actually. I check this, or our team check this sort of every couple of days, just to make sure if there are any concerns or issues in there. So that's just to point that out to you. So this, I'm sure you're all very familiar with this because you've registered your ECTs, etc. I'll go to the top here. So if you go to resources, excuse me, I'm just going to have to sign in again. So you click on resources. I will put in here a recording from today's session. I will also put in here the slides from today's session, so you'll be able to find them there. I won't email them out to you. That's where they will be. The handbook has been updated. So there, if you click into this one, you'll be able to see our ECT induction handbook. So please do the what you should include in a progress review at each stage. That table is actually inside that handbook as well. So I would signpost you to that. There's concern forms and support plans in there as well. If we go back to progress reviews and exemplars. So this is quite detailed what we've got here, because we've got a number of things, so it's important to just read exactly what they are. So the exemplars are actually progress reviews that we have written. Here we've got guidance. You can see that the term 1 ECT guidance completing a progress review. So that's guidance on how to complete it. The exemplars are actually what they should look like in their entirety. So we've got a primary one and a secondary one. You can see the second one there, but then we've also got 2 exemplars of a progress review of an ECT not on track. So I'll just click on this one here so that you can have a quick look to see, just check with you. Are you still seeing my screen? Has the review come up? Yeah, okay, so here we go. So it's just a brief paragraph there. It can be, as I said, maximum 100 words per teacher standards, 80, you know, this is probably the lengthiest it should be, just for your information. So you'll see that we've put here that the ECT is on track. So these are the reasons why the ECT is on track. There. So what I'm going to do now is go to share with you one that is stop share, an ECT that is, excuse me, back to resources. Not on track. So click on that. But you'll have time to, I won't go through all these now, you will have time to go through these yourselves. So just a brief overview there as to why an ECT is not on track, but also identifying areas of positivity as well. So what I'm going to do now is go back to the dashboard. Can everybody still see the dashboard? The ECT manager, am I still on that for your screen purposes? Excellent. I'm going to show you now what you will see when you fill in your progress review. So it'll come up on your dashboard very shortly, around the 25th of November, that you have a progress review due or a assessment. So if you click on fill in here, this is what it would look like for you. So will this ECT be remaining at this school for all or part of the next report period? If you tick no, you will then by default have to complete an interim assessment. But I would have thought at this stage, everybody would be clicking on yes, because your ECTs have just been with you for one term. So then we click continue. And here you'd have to put the days employed during this period. So you can get that from your business manager, I presume. Has the ECT had any absences during this period? Yes. And I might put that they've had 2. Have they received support and entitlements? Now that means, have they been receiving their early career, their reduced timetable? Have they been receiving their mentoring and coaching? Have they been receiving the ECF-based curriculum that you are signed up to? So I click yes for that. And then here it's a simple, the ECT is on track or the ECT is not on track. If you click not on track, you would be then signposted to give reasons why, but also asked and requested to upload a support plan. The ECT is on track. And then we come down to this section here. And what we ask you to do for progress review 1 is just write teacher the 3 teacher standards that we've asked you to give a commentary on. So you'd write TS1, set high expectations, and then your very brief paragraph of no more than 80 to 100 words. And then likewise for TS3, and then again for TS7. And then you would just click save and continue. So I'm just going to put an XXXS in here for now. Save and continue. Contract type, then you put it in, say it's temporary, continue. If you have not finished it, you can go back to complete it. So that's something that you can go dip in and out of. If I have completed it, I click continue. And then it would be sent to my ECT to add their comments and also then to the head teacher to sign it as well. So that was a bit of a quick dummy run, if you like, in terms of how to complete a progress review. And likewise, it would be the same if you were completing an assessment, but the form is much more prescriptive, and you would have to click on whether they have met, not met, or partially met the teacher's standards. So I do feel that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour for you regarding how to complete a progress review and to navigate ECT Manager, but I'd like to save the last sort of 10 minutes or so for questions that you have. So I am going to stop sharing my screen and ask Marine and Kuljinder to go through any questions that we have in the chat function or any that you would like to ask me now regarding ECT induction.
I'm just going to read the questions out now, so I'm just scrolling.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm the mentor and induction lead. Do I need to attend all the meetings for both, as I'm struggling to fit them all in? I think that.
What meetings do you mean?
I think that's probably about more about the early career framework, so more about ECT stuff, maybe.
No, could you ask that question, please?
It's
So just like to clarify that.
Kate Brewis.
Kate Brewis. Okay, so Kate, do you mind just sort of unmuting and clarifying what you mean by that? Could you just read the question again to me, please?
So I am the mentor and the induction lead. Do I need to attend all the meetings for both, as I'm struggling to fit them all in?
Is Kate on the call?
Not sure. Well, if she's using Ambition, then there are no meetings for induction leads. The meetings and the conference and the clinics are only for mentors.
Yeah.
So that
I will get back to Kate
Yeah,
on that. So it's fine. Okay.
Do we already have a login for ECT Manager, or is this coming? So does everyone have a login at this point?
Yeah, because you've assessed if you haven't got one, then please contact me straight away, because everybody should have had as an induction tutor lead, you will have a login to ECT Manager for sure.
Are induction leads able to outsource the coaching on coaching, as I do not have capacity with regards to workload?
That's something that we could look at and discuss. So that if you came back to me with that, that's an email. If you just email me regarding that, that's fine.
I've taken on an ECT who is in term 3. Will I be able to see her progress reports from term 1 and 2 before I complete the assessment points?
Yes, because you should and could have requested them. I can request them as well, but if you drop me an email, please, that would be perfect, because we can look at where I presume they may have been at Bradford, a local authority appropriate body, but also you can request them through their school. So if you contact the previous school they were at and request them, and I equally will request them as well. We've done that for other colleagues on the call here today.
I think that answers the next question, which was, if an ECT transferred from another school, how do you access previous progress reviews? So that one's been answered.
You can request them from their school, but also you can request them through the appropriate bodies. If you let me know, I will also get them requested and share them with you via ECT Manager.
How do we get in contact with Emma? Please, can you share her email?
You would go through the AB. So if you email ab@Exceed Academies Trust, because we have so many inboxes that we have to man between us. We have an MPQ one, a TS Hub one, an ECT one, and an AB one. So we ask anything to do with the appropriate body, you please go through the AB email address, and it is manned every day.
I have an ECT old style NQT who is currently in their final term. What type of form needs to be completed?
It will be against all the teacher standards, and that ECT Manager that will have been automated and sent to you when it comes to that assessment point. So yours will be sort of it's very similar to the assessment standard assessment that Maureen spoke through, but the form will be automated and sent to you.
Is there a set number of observations that need to be carried out by the induction lead?
No, it doesn't stipulate it in the statutory guidance. That's why we refer you back to that. It is an absolute must read, because I think that gives you real support and guidance on how you go about that. But I mean, it'd be quite nice for colleagues if we've got experienced induction leads that have gone through this process last year and now have an ECT too, if they would like to share what they do as best practice, or to pop it in the chat function. But we don't stipulate and say, I mean, obviously it wants to be frequent, but not every week, but equally not once a term.
I've reduced this year. Last year I did 2 per half term, and this year I'm going to 1 per half term, because I felt that made sense with it being the second year and the reduction in time.
Yes.
I've sort of reduced it down. So now I just make sure I've done 1 sort of each half term. So I'll have done 2 before doing the progress review. That's sort of how I've structured it.
Yeah. And Shabana, she said that she does 1 formal and 1 informal per half term, which that sounds really good as well. Because don't forget, your ECTs will be getting those 15-minute snapshot observations as well from their mentor. They are not an assessment tool, but also they are but that triangulation of best practice and areas of development and strength will be communicated as a team, won't it? So please, can you clarify what the expectations are? Sorry, I'll let you carry on reading them, Maureen, because I'm jumping around here.
Thank you. I'm just going to let someone in again. So when do ECTs go on the school's appraisal process? Is it at the end of the 2-year period?
Yeah, we have no guide on the statutory guidance says that they're not under performance management. So we are presuming, unless guidance changes, that it would be at the end of the 2-year induction period.
Neil said, for clarity, will the guidance resource on ECT Manager that states that the term 1 progress review is around part 2 only be updated? Let me just try and make sense of that. For clarity, will the guidance resource on ECT Manager that states that the term 1 progress review is around part 2 only be updated?
It's been updated, Neil. It was updated last week.
Okey-doke.
So it's, as we said on this call here, that's why we've made those changes. So the progress review one will focus on TS1, TS3 and TS7, and there's exemplars for there for you to see. I will communicate this out in an email as well, but most definitely that has been updated on in the induction handbook on ECT Manager.
Do we have to do a formal observation prior to writing the report?
Well, your formal observations would inform part of your report. If you're evidencing where your ECTs have met the teacher's standards, it's that triangulation, isn't it? Learning walks, book scrutiny, conversations, etc. I would like to think an observation will have taken place before that helps part inform your report.
The assessment form is known to log you out whilst you are working on the form, resulting in work being lost. Has this been looked into?
This happened to me because I was writing some of the exemplars actually, and I just kept clicking save every 5 minutes, particularly for the assessment. The progress review one didn't seem so bad because it is just that one box that you're typing in. But I would say with the formal assessment, for those of you that are doing that, every time you've written a few sentences, I would just click save because there is a save button below each of the teacher's standards. But I can follow that up again with ECT Manager.
Are there any Term 3 review exemplars?
Not yet, because but we will be putting them on there because it is just a brief overview of what good looks like, you know, what areas of strength, areas of your ECT, just so there's no hidden surprise, unless you feel that your ECT is struggling and not on track, then we would have to, you would let us know, and we might look at a more structured sort of progress review report.
One of our ECTs is leaving. Would we just complete the document the same?
It depends if they have been there for over a term. It may be like when you get to the bottom where it asks you, is your ECT continuing with you after this report? If it's a no, then you'd be completing an interim assessment.
I put this in an email, but 2 of my mentors have not received any training. They were told they would be sent information regarding async. Please could you let me know what's happening? So is that something I can look into?
Yeah, that's Marine will action that.
Well, let me just make a note of that, Charlie, and I will look into that.
Okay.
So leave that one with me, mentor training. The next one is, how do we access the training on the 30th?
Okay, I will send information out about that. And because again, a lot of you will have done this last year. So it's you observe that coaching session and then you give feedback on their coaching, and it's sort of registered on StepLab. So information will go out about that by the end of this week. And it's Ambition and ourselves that will be delivering that, so that because you all have access to StepLab anyway. So it should be quite straightforward for you to be able to do that. And it also does support you implementing the ECF-based training, which is one of your prime remits as an induction lead as well. Just going back to that capacity issue, but if that person could email me, that would be really good. We can follow that up.
Would you expect the form to be completed alongside the ECT during a review meeting, or would this be done separately?
Well, that's your professional judgment. It's really nice to you would like to think that you would have put a skeleton one together and then it's open to discussion. So it's a shared document because you're sharing information about them rather than, you know, that they might help and inform part of that process. It depends what your way of working actually is. And it could be moderated with them and agreed and shared and discussed.
A few people have asked, is there an alternative date to the 30th of November? But am I right in asking Harriet to record?
Yes, yeah. But we'll also have to get ask Harriet Ambition as well if there is a second date. So I'll send some information out about that this week. So thank you.
Fine. Is there a suggested length of time for observation that the induction lead should carry out?
Well, I think it would just be standard, wouldn't it? You wouldn't stand. Do you normally stand in a lesson for an hour with somebody? We normally go sort of like 20 minutes, half an hour. I think would be the most sensible. I'm seeing nodding heads here, so I think it's just that standard professional judgment.
Philippa said, I'm confused about the role of Exceed. Previously, I reported on EC Manager to LA.
I don't understand. Can you repeat that question, that comment, please?
So I am confused regarding the role of Exceed. Previously, I reported on ECT Manager to LA.
To the local authority. Then you must. Can Philippa? Could you? Shabana, you had your hand up there. Do you know something about that?
That's
Or
me.
Philippa?
I think Philippa, maybe the LF was the appropriate body previously and Exceed is your appropriate body now.
Right. Okay. So the password I have is just for the local authority. Will you be sending out new ones then?
Philippa, what school are you at?
Peel Park.
Field Park.
Peel Park.
Oh, Peel Park.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you change from, were you with the Bradford Local Authority last year?
Yes.
And now you're with us at Exceed?
I thought I was still with the local authority, but I've been invited, so I'm assuming I'm with you now.
Yeah, you are. I'll look into that, Philippa.
thank you.
So
How
I
long
should make a
ago,
note of
Philippa,
that.
did you use ICT? Sorry, not ICT. ECT Manager
In the
before
summer term.
in the summer. Right. Okay.
Yeah, so if you've been invited to this, I presume I'll look into that at Peel
Okay.
Park, but yeah.
Thank you.
So, but if you've got that, you should have ECT login details for us, an ECT manager. But do you think you're still logging into the local authority one?
I don't know.
Okay.
All I know is I've got written down the login for Bradford County.
So this is
and I was
Philippa
confused.
Varley, yeah?
Yes.
This is Philippa. Okay, we'll leave that with me, Philippa,
Thank you.
and I'll look into it and get back to you at the end of this session.
Thanks, Shabana.
We have an ECT who's leaving teaching and does not want to continue. What do we need to do?
Oh, so if she's resigned or he has resigned, then I guess it's sort of going through that process, letting us know in terms of them accessing the early career teacher program, but also the appropriate body. But if that person has decided to leave the profession, I guess that's their decision. And but they still need to engage with the ECF based training whilst they're employed, and also you would have to complete, if they've completed a term or more, an interim assessment.
Our ECT started just before the October break. We are struggling to register them with the DFE. They started their ECT induction at a different school with a different teaching school. Any advice?
Okay, what school is that, please?
It was Jackie Renton. I don't know what school.
Victoria Primary School.
Victoria Primary.
Okay, so Maureen will support you with that, because Maureen's looking into all the early career teacher, that's ECF based training, but appropriate body stuff, everything is in place there. But Maureen, are you okay to follow that up with Victoria? Because Maureen can access and see what's happening at DFE backstop. Maureen will come back to you and make a note of the person's name. Sorry, yeah.
So thank you very much.
That's fine.
Super.
Thank you. We are having, this is, if this person gives me their name, then I can help them. We're having big problems with Step Lab. They haven't transferred our ECT year 2, was transferred from another school onto the system until now. So if that person just gives me their name, you can just unmute yourself, then I can help you. But
hi, that's me, Stephanie Goodlad. Hi.
What
Stephanie Goodlad.
Sorry.
Oh, Leeds City College.
Thank you, Leeds City College.
Right, Maureen will be in touch with you, Stephanie, to help with that.
Hello, this is Philippa Tomlinson. We're having a similar problem.
And what school is that, Philippa?
That's Lidget Green Primary.
Thank you.
We're having a lot of problems.
Are you not accessing Step Lab?
No.
Right, okay. This is where Maureen's role as early career teacher program leads. You can so if you email ECT at Exceed, I know that you have to email ECT support, but Maureen can try and fast track issues like that. So that's why we have her role in place. So if you make sure you drop her an email, that would be brilliant.
And that's at ect@exceedacademies.co.uk.
exceedacademiestrust.co.uk.
There you go. Shabana said, I carry out an informal and formal each half term. I think she was just advising.
Yeah, super.
Can you please clarify what the expectations for term 4 progress reviews are in relation to the teacher standards and what this looks like?
Because we said, going back to the grid, because they are in term 4, it's sort of partway through into year 2, that is a lighter touch. So it could just be a 300-word overview of where you see the areas of strength are in terms of your ECT and possibly any areas of development, but mainly it's their areas of strength. So there's no hidden surprises, but we're not going into that real depth because you're building up to the final assessment.
Do we need to record our observations as induction lead anywhere?
Well, this is again back to local school level. I think it's best practice too, because otherwise you're not going to have evidence of things that have occurred in terms of you supporting your ECT through their 2-year induction process. So there should be, as you would carry out any observation with performance management or any colleague, you would have a note of that. But what that looks like would be down to your sort of local school policy level.
I have a mentor who is leaving and taking over. They are working together to ensure a good transition, but will they be able to have official training before January?
No, they could be assigned asynchronous, but again, information like that is really, really important because your funding is for a mentor, not for multiple mentors. So can that query needs to go through ect@exceedacademiestrust.co.uk, because to be changing a mentor so early on can impact on the funding, but also the training that's given. But if that could be sent to Maureen, please via email, and then she can action that and respond appropriately.
And I think this is the last one now, just a couple. On my ECT manager, I have one ECT registered and assigned to myself. I took over as induction lead this year. We have 2 more ECTs in school, but their name and information does not appear on my Exceed manager page. However, I can see all my ECTs on the Step Lab page.
Okay, so have these, that means that they probably haven't been registered with the appropriate body. So they need to be registered with the appropriate body. Which school is this?
So this is, it doesn't say a name. So if this person can let us know, we can send that link through.
It's Asquith Primary School.
Asquith.
Okay, so go on.
So the other ECTs, one's ending her first year in January, and the other one is finishing her second year in July.
And you don't have any details of them on ECT manager?
No, the old induction lead is still registered on there, but I can't see any of their information. I've registered obviously the new ECT that started in September, so she's assigned to me there, but I can't see the other 2.
Okay, and they have been registered then, I presume?
Yes, because they started obviously in the previous year.
Well, if you leave that with me, just like
Okay.
Park, I will look into that one. So that's Asquith. Then, sorry, what's your name?
Anushka Holdsworth.
Anushka. Okay, Anushka, leave that with me and I'll look into this afterwards. So Peel
Okay,
Park
thank
and
you.
Asquith, I need to. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're down to the last question. So if you are induction lead and mentor, how do we record the observations? Do we need to do the observations separately with the different hats on?
Absolutely, 100%. So as a mentor, you are providing instructional coaching and you're observing an action step that you've set on Step Lab, and it's that 15-minute observation that then is then followed up with instructional coaching with either that day or a day or 2 later, and that is recorded on Step Lab. That's how we know your instructional coaching is taking place. As an induction lead, you would be observing in a different capacity, as we've discussed on the call today. So looking at evidencing that your ECTs are meeting the teacher standards and doing, as we spoke about earlier, as Shabana's example, she does an informal and a formal observation per half term or term. Does that answer everybody's questions?
Yeah, so we're at the end of all the questions.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for your attendance and for your questions. I hope that's been useful for you in terms of setting out the expectations of you as an induction lead. And we'll be in touch with the slides. I'll post them on ECT Manager as well as the recording of today's session. So thank you very much.